From Chicago, it's another edition of the Live from the Heartland show with Katy Hogan and Michael James. We welcome all you friends, you neighbors, all citizens of the world. We've got a really nice show lined up. We've got a lot of information going on in a very tumultuous, however you would say that, world. We got a couple of great guests coming from Evanston to talk about indivisible and voting. And we're going to talk to our new friend, Matt Cheney, down there in Warrensburg, Missouri, who's going to talk about the Mississippi River and all kind of things that have gone on the banks of the Mississippi, as well as on boats going up and down the Mississippi. So how are you doing, Katy?
Fine, thank you, sir. Just fine. Did you have any good news you wanted to share, given that we try and start with that?
Well, I think the best thing for me was I got out of the house for a number of reasons, but the most fun was yesterday in the snow, in the afternoon snow. I took a 1.5 mile walk on that little track across the street from my house. And I remembered all kind of running in snow and running on ice in the winter, and some crucial times in my life. I'm kind of in a reflective state right now. And yesterday being outdoors was a lot of fun. And hopefully I'll get to doing that this afternoon too, in the bright sunshine before the next round of snow hits us.
Yeah, the other good thing that our friend and co-producer, intern Emilio wanted us to share, every student, a lot of people heard this week, but I didn't know the entire story. Every student from both Benito Juarez Community Academy in Pilsen and, God bless them, Al Raby High School in Garfield Park were granted full ride scholarships thanks to Hope Chicago, a not-for-profit that funds college scholarships for Chicago public school students. And the part I didn't realize until Emilio shared it was that a parent or guardian of each student will also get a scholarship, and that's to city colleges or junior colleges. I love it. And you wanted to add, you knew something.
Well, actually, beyond it, there's also other private colleges as well as state colleges and universities. So, and there's going to be more schools named in the weeks to come.
More high schools.
More high schools. So this is kind of interesting, that people are going to get their tuition covered. And, that's also going on with a lot of athletes who are putting up money to pay for people's colleges. Actually, we believe that education should be free, but this is good until we get to that place.
Okay. All right. What Michael was trying to refer to earlier in his tumultuousness, we are heartbroken that a war has broke out this week, an unnecessary, unprovoked war has broken out in the Ukraine, and of course infuriates our neighbors who are from and who have families still in Ukraine. Is there any more hopeless a feeling than what we felt this week as bombing began on the other side of the planet, over a peaceful country, over a country that has built itself up, and only to see these rockets come across and decimate their infrastructure? And at the same time, we see brave Russians demonstrating in St. Petersburg, Moscow, in many, many Russian cities against the war. Too many to be rounded up and taken away, thank God, although over 1,000 have been arrested, and not gently, according to some of the film I've seen. We bless you. We thank you, our Russian brothers and sisters who do not believe in this war. We're with you. Please that you get an anti-Vietnam War style size thing happening. But my God, it takes way more bravery for you guys to demonstrate than it did for us.
I'm feeling it a little bit because in '89, I was with Athletes United for Peace, and we flew into Kiev now, and spent some time in Donetsk playing baseball. It was already for me then kind of gray and a little bit dreary and challenging life. I remember there were runners who were running barefoot. They were striking miners. So that was under the Soviet Union.
Yeah, what year was that? That was '89?
it was 89. It was before the fall. And
right before the fall of the wall.
yeah. And I first came across people who were, I didn't know how to handle it because we were kind of guests and traveling the Soviet Union, but there were people who were speaking out already then about Russia and control. And I thought they were just wanting to bring back a monarchy or something. But I'm learning a lot now and remembering things, and actually started digging up a bunch of pictures that I took there. It's going to be a challenge for some time to come. You know, all these things that are being put in place will take time, and we'll see what they do. But there's some also interesting things going on too, and some unity among the European countries and standing up to it, and we'll see how it shakes out.
As it once again, Americans learn geography and world history by wars breaking out. So study up, fellow Americans, because we have to be on the correct side of this, and it's not with war. It's never with war. Let's move back to other news here in the national front.
Yeah, let's go to the Supreme Court. And President Biden has just announced his pick for the Supreme Court. It's Ketanji Brown Jackson. She's currently a U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. She's already been through the vetting process to be appointed to that position, and she'll be the first public defender to serve on the court.
As well as the first Black woman.
That's true.
Well, let's hope they don't hold it up. The Supreme Court declined to hear the appeal of the Standing Rock decision. The shorthand on that, for people who can't keep track of the back and forward of it all, is that it's good news. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is to continue the
moratorium or a ban. I mean,
no, it's not a ban. It's to continue the environmental impact study that the demonstrators, the many tribes that stood up against it, and other nations needed, brought about. So the Supreme Court let that stand, and that's good news. On another front, Texas is, as promised, really messing with people's franchise. This week alone, they refused like 40% of the write-in ballot applications based on them not following these new baloney rules that they put together. In other actions, voter protection wins a few, but we'll cover that more next week when a war being started isn't the thing that's really holding our attention. As everyone here knows, mask mandates are being pulled in 48 hours. How do we feel about that, Michael?
It's pretty uncomfortable wearing a mask a lot of the time, but I think I'm going to keep wearing a mask when I'm in public places for a while. It may be a little early, but I understand the economic drive, and people are, it's in turmoil.
Yeah.
So we'll hope for the best, and I think our time with this virus is not over yet.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. There's an interesting piece of news that Emilio brought to us. ComEd successfully tested the first microgrid here in Chicago, a network of solar panels, generators, batteries that can operate in conjunction with the main or grid, or disconnected and operate standalone. Whoever is on, could you turn off your mic, please? Thank you, appreciate it. This grid can operate in conjunction with the main grid or disconnect and operate standalone to keep power flowing during emergencies or main grid failure. The community microgrid will serve over 1,000 residents in Bronzeville. So it's expected to be fully operational by 2023, an excellent step forward. Thank you for looking forward, ComEd. Michael, you got something?
I got a little bit of labor news. There's a coalition headed by the AFL-CIO is fighting for labor standards for workers in the cities across the US, Mexico, and Canada that will host the World Cup matches in 2016. After a lengthy track record of contract workers being cheated out of their wages by FIFA, that's the Soccer Federation, a A spotlight on this year's 2022 World Cup being tainted by host nation Qatar's use of indentured migrant labor. The AFL-CIO has formed a coalition with Human Rights Watch, Jobs with Justice, and several other organizations. This is a good thing. And I think we're kind of running out of time. Hold on. No, we got a few more minutes, Kate. So what do you got on the new ward map that's coming to town here?
Well, in an Axios report this week, the ward remap headed to the voters. That's the bigger picture is the nonpartisan political advocacy group last week endorsed what some people are calling the Latinos caucus map, which I find really disheartening. That people are calling maps Latino or African American, I think is a real problem. The People's Map, so-called, was the one that was attempting to do a more diverse, compact, and best at keeping communities intact. But unfortunately, alderpersons concerned with their futures were not willing to support that map. We will see, as the executive director of Change Chicago, Ms. Dubeck, said, we concluded that the Latino caucus map is the best map that can be put in front of voters and thought it was important to support it. Most people are not paying attention to that, even though they should. But so we will continue to.
Well, it's time for station break. So I'm going to tell everybody that you are listening to the Live from the Heartland show. We're on WLUW 88.7. We're aired on Saturday morning at 9, and it's also streamed. You can get it later at youtube.com/heartlandmedia. And our next guest is out of Missouri, a fellow named Matt Cheney. Hey, welcome back to Live from the Heartland. And now we're going to talk about Missouri. We're going to talk about music. We just heard a little bit of Elvis Presley, and he was singing Mystery Train. It was on the Sun label out of Memphis in 1956, along with Scotty and Bill. And you picked that song. How are you doing, Matt Cheney? You got a guy out there in the friendly little town of Warrensburg, Missouri.
Well, I'm doing well. I appreciate coming on the show with Michael and Katy. And I am a ways off the Mississippi River here. I'm about 200 miles inland out near Kansas City. But I grew up along the river. Probably can't tell from my voice, but I did. And it's still I still do a lot of writing.
I've been reading some of your writing, and we'll talk about that. And you do have a book out that addresses the NFL and drugs. You also talk about music. You talk about the history of music along the river, people on river boats, people on the river banks listening to tunes, the whole thing. Why don't you give us a little geography lesson about the Mississippi River, the towns along it that you write about, and what captured your attention?
Well, it really goes back. I lived in the Delta, what you call the northern end of the Mississippi River Delta, not to be confused with the famous Mississippi State Delta of like the Yazoo River Valley. I'm talking southeast or swamp-east Missouri. It's one of the biggest portions of the Delta that stretches from Cape Girardeau about 700 miles onto the Gulf of Mexico, past New Orleans, of course. And musician-wise, I lived there from 1966 to 71 as a grade schooler. My father was a school administrator who integrated the school system there. 12 years after the court order is when they began it. And it was really probably most profound experience I think I've had, those 5 years of grade school. And I don't think I would have been a writer had I not lived in Charleston, Missouri for 5 years.
Well, one of the reasons that your writing and stuff has captured my attention is that it's going to be spring real soon. And a lot of people want to travel, including me. And I like road trips, and I like the idea of going down along the river. I've been around Keokuk and a lot of other spots, but not further south. Although I have been to Poplar Bluff, as you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
You wrote a piece, 1960, Elvis drives Highway 61 amidst music
Yes.
legends. And you talk
Yeah.
about Elvis driving down 61, traveling the country where plenty of other musicians played before Elvis was
Yes.
even born. How about telling us a little bit about what's on that road and heading
Well,
south?
what had happened, that was when Elvis and his cousin Gene Smith took a red eye from Los Angeles. They come into St. Louis at the end of June there on a Thursday morning and sneak in. They grab a rental Cadillac there at Lambert Field and then haul ass south. They haul out of St. Louis, hit Highway 61 there at still the intersection, Lee May Ferry Road, and then head south. So at that point, they're really dwelling in the areas of music from there down to Memphis and beyond, Mississippi, north or eastern Arkansas, southeast Missouri, where Elvis, all of the music that preceded, quote, rock and roll, and it really was what we call rockabilly from these guys. You know, Bill Haley was rock and roll. Fats Domino was rock and roll. In the late 40s, Hank Williams was rock and roll, moving on with a guitar solo, 1946, and Elvis says as much, and others. But the point is, what gave us rockabilly, four rather nice categories you can fall it into: country music, blues, including rhythm and blues, jazz of all sorts, and then gospel religious music. And after that, once Elvis and those guys got the records out, the blues artists of those times too were going electronic, coming also at Sun Records, but especially up in Chicago at Chess. The rhythm and blues breaks out, and as Elvis was told, well, you just messed everything up, we're not going to be able to tell the difference. So he's driving this road that's going to take him from St. Louis to Memphis, and it envelops every type of music that was purely American music, American scenes, settings, singers, written types that were all captured in that span where he's headed to Memphis. And what would be about a 7-hour trip, he stops one place we know of, and that was Hayti, Missouri. He stopped there, and Elvis and his cousin, they stayed there about 45 minutes, had lunch, gassed up, and then headed on back. And then later on, I found out his cousin, who was riding the whole way, he got a DWI, he got a drunk and disorderly at his house once they got into Memphis. And so it's kind of interesting. They had an interesting day.
Our mutual friend Dave Megacy introduced me to you, and you sent me a copy of your book, Legend in Missouri.
Oh, yes.
And it's 5 stories in Missouri lore: 1925 Tri-State Tornado, Osage Indian Nation, Ulysses Grant and the Battle of Belmont, World War II baseball hero, and 1960s basketball integration. Do you care to share a little bit about any one of those stories?
They're all, kind of close to my heart. They, as now, are hundreds of really outstanding Missouri type active history stories that I know of. That was an outgrowth of the first book I did, which was on a basketball phenomenon in a little town down in southeast Missouri, kind of one of the innovative places of modern basketball. It wasn't the Hoosiers of Indiana. It was actually this team that averaged 100 points a game down and played in a log gym in southeast Missouri, as far as a basketball team. But that was pro and everything. But I came out of that book with a lot of topics, learned about, Ulysses S. Grant should have been killed 4 times in one day in southeast Missouri at the very beginning of the war. Think of that.
Michael,
he
hold that
escaped
book up again.
phenomenally.
Michael, hold that book up again.
Yeah.
And can we ask Matt, is it still in print? Can people still?
Yes, I have exactly those paperbacks. Thank you, that Michael has in his hand there. And soon I'll get my page back up on Amazon. redoing some things, but we have it just through our website. They can get it. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, but those stories, that tri-state tornado is an incredible, you've always heard of the Murfreesboro tornado, I presume. Awful tornado that was actually mimicked in many fashions recently with the horrific Mayfield, Kentucky tornado.
That's
It's a
right.
long ranger, a 200-mile plus on a straight line, basically, and it's basically what we call a F4, F5 the whole way, never leaves the ground. And that's the one.
What was the year of the tri-state? Was it 1925?
1925.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Katy. It's gosh, it's coming up here soon at the 100-year mark. I spoke in Murfreesboro on the 75-year mark, which was really an interesting situation. That was what 75 years after the tornado in 2000. So many of the survivors were there. There was a row. We had about 10 speakers, and we each had 6 minutes, and there was a row in front of us of honor, and those were the survivors of the tornado, and most were from Murfreesboro, and they were all obviously children or young people, youths at the time of the tornado, and several were still in wheelchairs from the tornado. And I had the opening of that book is where the first victim was claimed on near Current River in southeast Missouri. His name was Sam Flowers, and he was walking down a hill, and this monster black cloud, which is what they call them rain shrouded ground hugging cloud, and they still occur, but now thankfully we have such great advance warning, but it still is so dangerous, of course. But this thing snuck up on Sam Flowers at Ellington, Missouri, and killed him. And he was the first victim of some almost 700 before this thing ended 230 miles later in Indiana. And Illinois suffered terribly. It killed an average of 12 people a minute in Illinois, and it flew across Illinois in about an hour and was doing 60 to 70 miles per hour. And it ran right up the Muddy River Valley and the old Wabash line, I believe it was, but it's today that runs through Murfreesboro, a town called DeSoto, narrowly misses Carbondale and such.
Another thing that I remember reading in one of your stories was about these kind of barnstorming air shows. And guys doing, standing up on these planes and tell us
I think it's fantastic stuff. And what I discovered first, I backed into the story. I started this story out because one of my friends was on the '64 Beatles tour. He was the lead singer for the Bell Black Combo, the late Bill English. I was just going to write a story about the Beatles in the Ozarks. They tried to sneak away during the tour. They came to the Ozarks, and Bill himself had always said, and boy, he sounded like Elvis Presley. And he was like, Cheney, that ain't the story about us in the Delta. The story is the Rockabillys, not the Beatles. So that's what started this book, 2 books that I'm now doing. So I back all the way back into what I call Entertainers West, the original actors and musicians who came down the Ohio to the Mississippi in the 1810s. And so in this process of all this music and such, I get into finding out that circuses spawned were huge at spawning what we call American pop music that became pure American music, such as ragtime. And the circuses were integral. And it was amazing to me. The circus, I lived in Florida when I was a young guy. Sarasota was where John Ringling, tremendous town. He had bestowed a great museum and everything. I thought the guy was so exotic. He must be from perhaps Spain, heck, he's from Baraboo, Wisconsin,
right.
And and a little town above Dubuque, Iowa, McAllister, I think it is, that's where the Ringling Brothers came from. So all this shows up, and that's how I start getting into all this curricular entertainment that went hand in hand with music the whole time. Circuses, of course, no one wants death-defying defeats, which truly death-defying, and especially without music. It had to be there. And so when these stunt planes come in after World War II or World War I in particular, they're hawked all over the country for $10 a piece and stuff. So many guys jump in. First time a guy ever touched a stick was the plane he bought, and he took off down a field. So these guys were really amazing people, and they were incredible entertainers, to say the least. No one took their eyes off of them. And so, yeah, that was part of jazz in particular. Jazz was huge in this.
One of the things you and I talked about was a book by Stiles called Jesse James, The Last Rebel of the Civil War. And, I named one of my sons Jesse James because I always thought of him as a people's bandit, stealing from the rich, giving it to the poor. But he was a Confederate ideologue. Right. And he, even though Missouri was a Union state, we think of it as a slave state and a Southern state because it did still have slavery. And you care to make a comment on Jesse James and that legacy and how it's been misconstrued?
Well, I wish one of my relatives, Bill Settle, had gotten his book in your hand before you named his son. A relative of mine, Bill Settle Jr., wrote the first accredited biography of the James Gang in 1968, like almost 90 years after Jesse was shot. All the media, the dime store novels, the movies. There's some movie, Jesse James Meets the Bride of Frankenstein stuff, And so all of this content, and no short amount. Jesse James, much like Elvis Presley, try running that name online. See what you get. It's bottomless. Yeah. The references and indexes. So yes, Jesse was the son of two nearby, up above Warrensburg here, near Kearney, present-day Kearney, Missouri, where you were familiar with, St. Joe. And they came, I believe, in 1843, and they were slave owners. They were obviously secessionists from the very beginning. And Western Missouri border was a hotbed of secession, of course, because the Jayhawkers, the war really began, according to some historians. Jay Monahan very clearly makes the case. The Civil War began in 1854 with Kansas statehood, and or maybe it was Nebraska. I get it mixed up, but I believe it was Kansas. But point is, the border war between Missouri and Kansas began in earnest in 1854 and was very, very bloody, and continued here, including in this right in front of this house that I live in. The James Gang used to ride right through our neighborhood. It's a creek that circles the old town and rob the Transcontinental Railroad, which is a block away. Hopefully they won't come by, or we're not going to be able to hear each other, the railroad. So pretty interesting. This was a no man's land. It was terrible, like much of our war-torn areas of the world, then and now still. And basically if you didn't have big security and or a gang or an army division on your side, you were really not living in the hinterland by the end of the war. You had fled to Kansas City, Columbia, or St. Louis to escape the horrific gangs that are running around.
Matt, before we run out of time, I want to ask one other thing.
Yes.
Because you write more about more than Missouri, although I do love the fact that you're so local and so full of information about the local, and that's so valuable. But
Thank
let's
you.
while we've
Yeah.
got you, sport is another theme. So share
Yes.
a little bit about your book, Spiral of Denial, regarding the NFL
Yes.
and drugs.
Yes, and it really, Katie, it's really the game as a whole. You know, the NFL is the highest profile. That's what catches all the attention typically. And, you know, it's kind of ironic. I've got a lot of empathy for NFL players, but they are adults, you know, and there are more hazardous jobs in the NFL. My good friend who played in the NFL was killed in one of, you know, in he wasn't a professional, but tree cutting, for instance, is, you know, horrific, and on and on. But I still think much falls short in care of the players, and they're going to have to figure, just on the NFL quickly, it's up to the players. They've got a horrible union right now. This is the worst union in American labor history, the NFLPA. I'm sorry, a friend of ours is associated with it. Dave Megacy, I know, has tried everything he can, but they suffer. And Dave actually, Dave has the idea to help the players. The players league, where they own the game, and the owners are minority shareholders. That's the game will never fly without the human talent on this field, and especially the quarterback club, the 10 tremendous quarterbacks of any given year, on and on. So Dave has the idea, and others, and that is for the players to take over the game and cut just a little piece of the pie for the owners. And I think they could win. What's America going to do? What's the so-called owners going to do without the commodity talents? And especially if all the players are united. See, the players, the union has always been minus the quarterback club. The greatest quarterbacks don't back the players.
Well, that's your book, Spiral of Denial, is worth a read. And, you know, we'll be talking more about football next fall.
You bet. But I love the game. I played it.
Me too. All right. It's great to meet you online, and we'll be driving through there before you know it. And,
absolutely. Let's get together when you do. I'll meet you on the river.
Right on, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Matt Cheney. And
thank you, Katie. Michael, take care. Have a great weekend in Chicago.
Right on.
All right. Candace Davis and Etta Worthington, welcome to Live from the Heartland. And thanks for joining us. First, for those who may not know, a brief description, if you will, of Indivisible, the political action group your work springs from. Did you hear that?
Etta, you want to take that one, or you want me to?
Sure. Indivisible is a group that got started just shortly after Trump was elected in 2016. And as the story goes, there were a couple of former congressional staffers that got together feeling pretty bad. And I think there was a little bit of wine involved. And they decided they had to do something. And what they decided to do was, let's write up a document that will tell people how to resist Trump. They thought they could do this, they'd share it with friends, and you know, that would be helpful for people to have some hope. So they wrote it. It was about a 26, 27 page document they put up on Google Docs, and then they tweeted it out. And very soon it crashed because there were too many people trying to download it.
Right.
And what they did not expect also was that people would form groups around this. This document was about how to resist Trump based on Tea Party tactics. And it's just mushroomed from there.
So, yep. So we're still fighting. We're fighting his agenda. We're trying to rebuild democracy, and we're committed to electing progressive leaders. So there's grassroots groups all across the United States, including Indivisible Illinois, Indivisible Evanston, Indivisible Western Front. So we're into it.
Well, you've got something going on called the Truth Brigade. The Truth Brigade. How about telling us a little bit about what that is and what it's, what's happening?
Well, Candace, I can step in first and just say, because I was there at the first meeting that they had for the National Truth Brigade organization. It was at a virtual meeting, and this was August of 2020. And there was this title for the meeting. It was Fighting Disinformation Online. And boy, that was intriguing to me. So I went. And they started this whole campaign of getting people to join up, having a format to share the truth online, and then encourage people to interact with what they were doing online, Twitter particularly. And from that, it's grown to a group of probably close to 5,000 individuals who are involved. And I think the latest total was 245 million impressions from this group of people. And we're not bots, we're people, we're human beings sharing the truth in a way that seems important.
Yeah.
But then Truth Brigade, then we got a local group started, an Illinois group. Candace, do you
I was
want to?
going to say, our concept is that we know that there's a lot of disinformation out there. And we knew that if we would just commented on it or tried to answer back, you started a big fight. So somebody puts out bad information, you answer back, they start fighting with you. And we instinctively knew that wasn't effective. So what the Truth Brigade does is sort of stop, don't respond, don't push them up the line by commenting on it or hating it, no angry faces. Just let us put our own truth out there that's designed to educate people and get them to engage in a little more critical thinking. So we have the concept of the truth sandwich. You want to explain the truth sandwich?
I want to ask you before you go there, because it's all part of your 5 commandments of disinformation action. Right. I think we need to hear all of those, if you don't mind, because we've got time for those 5 points. You can do the shorthand version. We got smart audience.
Okay, now the first one is don't amplify disinformation lies. Don't respond at all.
Just let it go.
And that was mind blowing for me that was the thing to do.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to fight.
Yeah.
So our next commandment has to do with making sandwiches. And it's making a truth sandwich. And this gets a little bit more involved in a way, but to counteract lies, what we need to do first, and by the way, Truth Brigade doesn't take credit for this truth sandwich. It came from George Lakoff, who is a linguist from Berkeley, who developed this idea. And the idea is how to help people possibly decide to change their minds about things. You can't change them, but somebody else can change their own mind. So the truth sandwich starts with a truth on top. So you start with some kind of shared truth or some value that everybody has, everybody can agree to. For example, we all want to be healthy. That would be a shared value, right? Then you put in the middle part, the juicy part, which is the lie, and you question maybe who's saying it, why they're saying it, what's behind it. You don't maybe exactly quote somebody or necessarily put a person's name in there, but you're going to put the lie in there.
So for example, if we use your example about health, the lie would be that vaccines don't work or that that COVID is a hoax, right? Okay.
Right.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd say, in which we'd start off with the, we all care about our health, right? Then for the next part, we'd say, but there are a lot of people out there and there are websites that are saying the vaccine doesn't work. And it's just, a plot by the government to put, I don't know, something in your bloodstream or tracking devices, all kinds of things. I wouldn't go into all that fight, but then say, yeah, that's kind of the lie. So we have the lie in there. Then you get, and you have villains, I guess, as we say. Then you get to say what the real truth is. So I would go on, I've written posts about this, I would go on and say, we need to listen to science and to the doctors who spent their lives studying this. The truth is, the vaccine does save lives. Get vaxxed.
Yep.
Make sure your family.
And another way we look at that truth sandwich is what we call the 3 V's. And the first one is you start with a shared value. We all want to be healthy. And then in the middle is the villain. You call out the villain and their motives. And the third one is vision. You share the vision of what you want, which is for people to comply, for people to, to do the right thing.
Yeah. And, Katy, this has really helped me, this truth sandwich, because the idea of trying to connect with people while you're trying to open their mind and try and find what we all have in common. And I think on most any issue, we can do that. So it's really helpful to start with that.
You're right. It's a really useful little layout of, how to approach folks. What would be commandment 3? I liked that one too.
That one is that we use a visual with it, or we add an article to support it. So if you're saying vaccines work, then you add an article that says the CDC, shows that vaccines are effective. And then you also, lots of times what we'll do is add a nice graphic, and there's some wonderful graphics out there because studies show you that something that draws the eye, people are going to be much more likely to read it.
And commandment 4?
Well, number 4 is to kind of put it in a category. So we have a hashtag. We actually have 2 hashtags. The one connected to national is hashtag Truth Brigade. And then we have Truth Brigade Illinois. So hashtag Truth Brigade IL posts. And the reason we can access them, or we can track, how many people are doing that. But that actually kind of leads into number 5.
Go ahead.
Right. Which is AMP people who put out Truth Brigade and Truth Brigade Illinois, and then like and share, because it's shown that repetition is critical to people, getting things and retaining things. So we try to support each other by sharing everybody posts to the extent we can.
I had a couple questions, but one of them is you got to have a Twitter to do all this, right? No, because I don't have Twitter. I feel like an old guy. I mean, I only have Instagram and various
I thought you were
other
going to say
things.
TikTok, and then I was saying you're not an old guy.
No, I thought we have a Twitter account, which is at Truth Brigade Illinois, but you don't have to have one. There's a bunch of ways to do this, which is Facebook, which a lot of people use, but you can also do it in person. In person, the same theories and means of communication work when you're having a one-on-one conversation. Don't just jump down somebody's throat. Try to get the conversation started with a shared value. Then bring in, calling in the motives of the bad guy who are, why are people telling us this if it's not accurate? And then end up with your vision of, why can't we all just get along? But it works one-on-one too, and people should be using it.
And with Facebook, I think it's particularly, for me, it feels more effective because I have a lot more Facebook followers than I do Twitter followers. And I also know that about 75% of us have Facebook accounts, as opposed to maybe only 22% have Twitter accounts. So I feel like I'm connecting with people from all walks of life and from all levels of the history of my life, people from grade school through college to colleagues now. But this is going out to people, and not all of the people that are from my life agree with me politically. So I think, it could have an impact.
Even Nextdoor, I don't know if you guys use Nextdoor the way a lot of people in our neighborhood do. People who aren't on Facebook we'll use Nextdoor. And Nextdoor can be a great way to get these kind of messages out there too.
Well, that's good. Now, I understand you have a workshop scheduled for Tuesday, March 15th. And so what's the deal? How do people find out about that? What's the best way for folks to engage?
Well, that's a good question, Michael. I would say the best way is send in an email to us at that's not that right. Truth Brigade Illinois at gmail.com. I'll say that again, Truth Brigade Illinois at gmail.com.
All spelled
and
out.
ask to get an invitation.
All spelled
Yes,
out.
all spelled out. It's all lowercase. That doesn't matter. And what's going to happen? It starts at 7:30 on Tuesday night. And what we'll do is we're going to get together by Zoom. And it won't be quite as big as our big meetings, which I know, Katie, you attended one recently. It'll be a smaller one. It'll be more intimate. And we're going to actually work together, maybe in breakout rooms or as a group, and come up with truth sandwiches. And, it'll be relevant to whatever the news is that day or recent campaigns that have been come down from the national office. And we'll just try and make personal posts that have a truth sandwich in it that we can post on, Instagram or on Facebook or Twitter. Obviously, with Twitter, you have to be a little more succinct. But we're going to just work them out and get so people can feel real comfortable. And Candace, we have another focus that night too. You want to tell about that?
Oh, well, I was going to actually jump into the fact that I don't want people to miss that we're starting a new thing called the Truth Sandwich Shop. On Fridays from 11:30 to 1, we're going to be having a small group who does not, we're going to be making truth sandwiches, probably while we're eating some real sandwiches. But we thought that would be a great way for people to both spend the time and get things out there on Twitter and Facebook or wherever they're going to put it, and also to get people a chance to chat with each other. So that can be found if you send us the email, truthbrigadeillinois@gmail.com. We'll send you the links to all of these, to the membership form. We've got a Facebook page. And we also have coming up, we've got a bigger meeting. Ada, do you want to talk about that one? That is April 6th.
Yes, April 6th at 7:30 p.m. We are having Judd Legum of Popular Information. If you have not heard of this newsletter, you should go and subscribe to it. Judd is a journalist, and he is kind of working on his own outside of the regular media, but he's reporting on important things that maybe the media doesn't always get. I read it every day, but one of the things that I know he consistently brings up is, remember after January 6th last year, when corporations were asked to not make contributions to the insurrectionists, meaning the people in Congress, particularly, who would not support
Right.
the election, that it wasn't stolen. And there were large companies, corporations, who made that promise they wouldn't. Well, Judd has been digging up information. Those promises weren't honored. And
So can you
regularly
please spell the name of Judd Legum? I didn't.
Yes, JUDDLUGUM.
LEGUM, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, mine said E. My mouse said E. No, whatever. It did the wrong thing. Yes.
His blog is Popular Info. A lot of people subscribe to that. I think. Check it out, Popular Info. He's a great source. And one of the things we've been learning as we do this is one of the great things about Twitter, your messages are shorter, but the press tends to pay a lot of attention to what's on Twitter. And so we're learning to do things like call out the journalists, do an @ to the journalists who are bending the truth the other direction or giving too much time.
That was one of the most useful things that you guys said the other night was directing your short Twitter comment by putting the name of an editorial board person who just wrote something outrageous, and just call them out by saying, yeah, this is not where the truth lies. I feel, given what's going on right now in Ukraine, many of these tricks of the trade are going to be in high usage, given that we just had a defeated president cheer on, incredibly, Putin. So,
Yep.
The continued war against the big lies and the little lies and all the lies in between is going to be a big job. So what you guys are doing, you gals are doing, is so important. So before we let you go, I just wanted to say, okay, Michael, you want to shoot in
Well,
here?
we got a couple minutes left, and I'm always curious to know how you two got involved in movement work. I mean, what was it way back, and what led you on the path to social justice and a better world for all?
Well, I'm probably like a lot of people. Trump scared the hell out of me. I retired. Trump came in and I just went, how did this happen? This can't possibly have happened. This can't be true. I have to do something about it. So I got involved, and first I just started helping distribute postcards. But after that, I got pulled into the leadership team, and I was so frustrated with Facebook and trying to straighten out, lies, that when I heard this approach from Truth Brigade, I went, yes, that's it. We've got to find a different way to take control of it ourselves and not just fall into what other people are doing.
Yeah, for me, it was, I woke up the day after the election and went, oh, I'm not going to say the word in case you can bleep it out. So what am I going to do? And I really couldn't think of anything. I think I just didn't want to think about it. And after a couple of weeks, I said, I can't do that for 4 years. I can't, put my head in the ground. I'll end up super depressed. So what can I do? Well, I got an email it was from Move On. And they said, would you host a meeting about how to resist Trump? I'm not sure how they decided I would be a good person, but I said, sure, why not? I have a big living room. So on January 15th of 2017, 30 people showed up in my living room. 28 of them I had never seen before.
Amazing.
And we started, figuring out what we could do. And then after we did what we were supposed to do, they said, can we meet again? And we started meeting, and that became Western Front Indivisible. And we joined up with Indivisible. And, it was like, we have to do something.
Well,
and it's created a whole new connection with a whole bunch of people that are pretty exciting.
We need to thank you very much for coming on today, and to also remind people how they can find you, which is, as far as I can tell, Truth Brigade, Illinois, right?
Yep, at gmail.com.
Exactly. And also to let people know, this very, very useful workshop, they're welcome to join if they email you there at truthbrigadeillinois@gmail.com, Tuesday, March 15th, to join the workshop for that. So bless your hearts. Excellent work. Unfortunately, it continues to be extremely necessary.
Absolutely.
So shine on, you crazy diamonds.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jack. All right.
Thank you. Okay, that was inspiring. We're gonna go out quick now. I would like to find a peace march to march in myself. I hope you all feel the same way. Fat Tuesday is this week, and let's say this is gonna be a subdued carnival, given the sorrow on the other side of the planet. Michael, some sports?
On the sports front, we want to mention that there is a victory for women's soccer, equal pay. We'll see how the money gets divided up, but this is a big step forward.
Indeed.
How about in memoriam, Kate?
Well, everyone heard about it already. We're just heartbroken that for the untimely loss of Paul Farmer, great humanitarian, medical savant who brought healthcare to the most needy in our world, both in Haiti and Africa. Peace and blessings to those who love him and miss him. And thank you for the great gifts you brought us. What are we going out with?
We're going out with a little bit of pure Delta electronic instrumental music by Little Walter Juke from
So bring it-
1952.
So feel free to bring it up over this. We, for 25 years or more, we've brought you live from the Heartland, now called Heartland at Home, broadcast every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central on Chicago's WLUW 88.7 FM, streaming live from WLUW.org, archived on the youtube.com/Heartland Media, and now on Spotify and Google Podcasts. Thanks to the team, Emilio, Lynn, Luis, and Gwen, and my partner Michael. Let's do good in the world.
Because the world needs all the good that we do.
All power,
All power to the
to
people.
the people.